Hey, friends, I have a question for you. Do you think that ancient traditional healing practices might hold the key for modern chronic illnesses such as ME/CFS and long COVID? Hi, everyone. I'm Raelan, and on this channel, we talk to people who have overcome chronic illnesses and learn from their stories. Every week, we share strategies, struggles, and the inspiring stories of people who refused to give up. Today, we're diving deep into a recovery journey that spans continents and centuries old practices. I'm excited to introduce Sharleen Harty, a retired grant writer, researcher, and teacher with a background in anthropology. Sharleen travels between the US, Mexico, and South Africa, and her story is such a beautiful reminder that the potential for healing can be found in unexpected places. So let's welcome Sharleen. Sharleen, so amazing to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
So you've had quite the journey with all of this. Can you take us back and tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I think it went way back for me. It was viral, and I think it was Epstein-Barr at birth, triggered when I was about 15 with a first kiss. So I don't recommend that. And then the first serious episode was after pregnancy, and it lasted 5 years. And I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and had 2 miscarriages afterwards, but nobody knew what was triggering the fatigue and all this. And the second one, I had taken off on global travel. I had a polio booster shot. I was exposed to migrants all over the world. So a perfect recipe for triggering latent viruses and catching new. My two viruses are Epstein-Barr and atypical polio. And I've had blood tests where I've been able to measure the trajectory of recovery.
What kind of blood tests allow you to do that or show you that insight?
Epstein-Barr is the easy one. 95% of people have it, and they can do a simple test to diagnose it and all pathogens that we know about. Polio, not so much, because when modern medicine thinks something is eradicated, they don't diagnose, they don't know how to treat it. They certainly don't. So I used Epstein-Barr as my baseline. And before I had treatment protocols and treatment, it was off the charts over 600. Normal is between 1 and 20, which would be, I think, and then after my protocols, I was 0 with antibody.
I had no
So,
idea that you could test the levels like that. Like I was just saying before
yeah,
our interview, I learned so much from every interview.
yeah.
There's always so much more to learn.
I wouldn't have known for sure if I was cured if I didn't have those blood tests. But you can feel when the virus leaves your body, and you can feel when you're still fighting it, even if protocols are helping. It's an amazing thing to have Epstein-Barr because you can measure it. I imagine Lyme disease, you can as well. Maybe you can test for bacteria and mold and parasite. And that's what I would recommend if you're trying an alternative protocol or a Western medicine.
So, what was your journey like of trying to figure all of this out and get past it? What sorts of things did you try that weren't so helpful? What things started to get you on the right track? How did you go about this?
Well, once I knew it was viral, I wanted an antiviral. The doctors said we're taught not to use antiviral. So I fought for it and I got Beltrek, which made me very sick. And the next Western thing I tried was called oximetry with immune modulators, which was developed by an Asian American doctor in America. Again, nothing happened. And I was just getting sicker and sicker. And with this illness, doctors say if you don't find something in 5 years, you're generally headed towards bedridden, maybe forever. So, in desperation, I went to an acupuncturist in Washington, and he immediately diagnosed me with latent pathogens. He had an herb that worked. My doctors were not happy. Eventually, I married Bernadette, and another acupuncturist handed over a remedy, and that worked in 6 weeks. When I retested levels, it went from over 600 to 1 to 20, and at the 6 months, 0. with the Epstein-Barr virus.
That's incredible. I appreciate you sharing that because I didn't realize that you could test for levels like that. That sounds like a really good metric to see what's going on in your body. That's very helpful to know.
So those were the two things, acupuncture and lomatium. And I discovered a few more alternative protocols to heal all the damages because I was sick a total of 8 years, 4 years Western medicine and 4 years alternative. So the book I wrote, Home Alone 2020, shows the 4 doctors that I worked with, research doctors, and medications I tried, and then the Chinese traditional practitioners and the medications.
And you started seeing progress and having success with your recovery once you transitioned away from Western conventional medicine. So, if you could break down for us, what sorts of things did start to eventually help you?
The native remedy information, there's a nasal spray called xylitol that takes care of bacteria. So I took care of the viruses and the bacteria, and I discovered stem cell patches, which bring your energy levels back. It's sort of like stem cell therapy, but it regenerates your own cells.
Fascinating. Where does
And I still
one,
use.
how do you go about getting stem cell patches? What does that process look like?
It is all in the book Home Alone 2020. There's a content page. If you're very sick, I suggest going to the content page, zeroing in on the section you want. It's digital, so you can make the pages as large as you want and read it a page at a time. And I kept it to 80 pages. So I know how it is to be that sick where you can no longer read. I also provided links for audio and translation.
For people watching, this is all in the video description and this is all for free, correct?
Yes. And I kept it free. I thought about getting an agent, an editor, a publisher, distro, and I thought that could take years. And with long haul COVID, people who got sick in 2020 are at the 5 year mark, which is critical, that they need to find a diagnosis and a treatment that works for them.
All right. So back to the things that were helping you. Is there anything more that you want to explain about that?
The acupuncture was critical to keep me alive and to address the damages because there were so many. And the way the doctors were addressing it is with a different tablet for every symptom. And that was bringing me to death's door over and over again. So the viruses, in my case, were not killing me as fast as the medication. And I know it's different for everyone. We all have different triggers, we have different genetics, and we need different treatments, including diet. And I got mine down to one meal a day with foods that I know I can tolerate. But I tried all the fancy diets, including keto, and there were so many aspects of them made me sicker. So I think everybody has to find what works for them.
And what has this been like ongoing for you? Have you had to keep up a lot of these treatments? What are there any of them you still do now?
The main ones are the lomatium, the antiviral, the xylitol nasal bacteria, and the stem cell patches. I'm taking a trip to Chicago this weekend to see family, and I will pack those, and they're with me all the time in case I get stuck somewhere. And I do various other things, but people say, "What is your health like now?" And I say, in retirement, I'm healthier than I was growing up in Africa as a baby, maybe with Epstein-Barr and a certain mutation called MTHFR. Have you heard of that? It's a mutation that is like a checklist for ME/CFS, long COVID symptoms. And there are certain genetics I know that they've identified for long haul COVID. that makes those people susceptible to long-term post-viral illness. So the genetic testing is critical also because most doctors think this is mental illness. And if you have a genetic test with a long list of conditions that go with the mutation, they're more likely to be sympathetic.
I'm curious if this whole experience has changed or how it's changed your understanding of health, how it has changed the way you live your life, how you take care of yourself.
I use alternatives a lot. I'm in Mexico and they're called curanderas, healers. I use Western medicine for things like x rays, blood tests. I avoid pharmaceuticals because I have food intolerances. So if you have lactose, glucose, gluten, and that's in a tablet, you're already sick. And then there's side effects. So I avoid Western medication, but I do way more. I wrote a book, I travel, I do research, I write. Um, I still can get sick easily, and I have my system set up for travel when I get home. But that is a genetic component. The viruses are under control or gone.
From your perspective, from your research, your experience, because we have a lot of people out there facing a variety of different conditions brought on by different triggers, whether it be viruses, bacteria, trauma, stress, mold, all of these different things. What do you think the treatment approach looks like? Are there more commonalities in what people can be doing to recover, or is it just a really individual thing based on what brought this on for you and all those other factors?
Environment, genetics, and then all the other things you mentioned. If you add stress of any kind, and different cultures have different healing protocols. So I'm very respectful of all 180 people you've interviewed because where they live and who they are is what they needed. Yeah. And I bet there are overlaps. I love that research, 75 recovery interviews, and the common factor was the central nervous system. And that is one of the areas impacted by polio, atypical polio. So to me, that was fascinating. If you don't know you've had a form of atypical polio, you may have a central nervous system disruption. And one of the hardest symptoms that I still struggle with is insomnia and sleep. And that I think is the atypical polio and not the Epstein-Barr virus, which was more the fatigue.
And it seems like people who are willing to be open-minded and consider things outside of what they've been grown up and taught to believe about healing are finding a lot more success. Was there a shift for you where you thought, okay, this conventional medicine approach isn't working for me, I have to try something else? And what got you to that place?
Well, that's a funny question because it happened almost immediately. 1.5 years into the illness, they did a blood panel test and diagnosed off the charts Epstein-Barr virus. And I said, well, what do I do? And they said, well, we don't study viruses at medical school. And we're told not to use antivirals. And I actually made a video in which I said, we're in very big trouble because if you get something like a pandemic or an epidemic, none of the doctors on the front line know how to identify them or treat them. And that's what happened in 2020. And that's why I said Home Alone 2020, because even if you were with your family, nobody knew what to do, not the doctors, not the scientists, not the specialists. So we were all home alone.
Yes, it's a very good title. I suspect that resonates for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, very challenging time. So, for people that are watching, that are still trying to figure out their path out of this, is there something that you would say to them or something you would say to yourself if you could go back in a time machine to when this all first started happening for you? What are some of those key insights for you been on this journey?
If I'd known that alternative medicine worked, I wouldn't have used the free affordable healthcare. I did that for 4 years, and then I had to do 4 years of recovery with alternative meds. And one of the reasons I did the Western route is you need it to get disability benefits. You can't go into disability without a multitude of doctors signing off that you tried everything. So you're caught between a rock and a hard spot. You know it's making you sicker, but you have to do it because your funds are dwindling. Not I couldn't work, which I think is common.
Yeah, absolutely. And it obviously makes sense to start with the conventional medical system because in the beginning you don't know what's happening. So you have to rule a whole bunch of things out.
I think we are all raised to go to a doctor.
Yeah. Oh, I for sure. It was a very passive experience for me when my health took a nosedive and I went to my doctor. It was just sort of, I'm going to keep showing up until she fixes this. Like it's her job. She's going to figure it out. She's going to do something to me, give me a pill or something, do a test that reveals the magical solution. But yeah, not the case for most of us. It's a long journey of exploration.
Eastern medicine has a traditional Chinese medicine has a completely different approach. They take the body in entirety. They don't break it up into little pieces. So the minute I walked in, they diagnosed latent pathogens. They didn't say, "Oh, well, you're depressed, your thyroid is off, your diet is wrong, you're mentally ill." They didn't do that. They went right to one cause, and then they had the herbs or the native remedy that targeted the viruses. So it was a completely different experience from going to doctors for years who couldn't diagnose, couldn't treat, to walking into one appointment, getting a diagnosis, then going to another acupuncturist and getting the native and antiviral,
Wow.
like night and day.
Yeah, it seems that there's a lot that can be learned from both. Like I think both have things to offer, and if we could incorporate both into our approach, wow, would we be miles ahead, and we would all be doing so much better.
If everybody could share their knowledge, especially since it was global pandemic.
Well, it's so incredible that you have taken clearly considerable time to document this all, detail it all, make it available to people for free. Such a kind thing to do. So again, for people watching, I know we've kind of done a high level of a lot of this stuff, but Sharleen really has broken things down nicely in a clear, nice format. So just check out those links in the video description if, for the things here that are sounding intriguing to you or that you'd like to learn more about, because I'm sure there's a lot that we're not covering right now. But I'm so happy for you, Sharleen. It's so incredible that you have.
Thank you.
And you are where you are now. You talked about how you're traveling, the good place that you're in, feeling well, helping other people. Absolutely incredible. I just appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and with the viewers on my channel. I know they'll appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Likewise, I appreciate the interviews and the knowledge.
A blanket thank you to those of you watching for all of your patience with the technical difficulties that we have here and there. We really do try our best, but sometimes it's just, we can't get it perfectly. But yeah, for people watching, we'd love to hear from you. What's your experience been with Western medicine versus alternative medicine, traditional medicine? What have you found helpful? That's what this channel is all about, is sharing ideas, sharing what works for you. So if you have the time, the energy, just to take a moment to let us know in the comments, what's been the most impactful thing or some of the most impactful things for you so far? Let's just continue to get that information out there and help each other out. So yeah, thank you so much, Sharleen, again for doing this today. And thank you to those of you watching. I'm sending big hugs to you. Whatever you're facing, please keep at it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. And I hope to see you in this next one.